My Empire Ballroom friends, come get close to me. I showered yesterday. Well, I showered on Monday, but hopefully it still smells good. So that's always a good question. Did we all have a nice lunch? Yes! Are we energized for the last part of CleoCon? Yes! Are we getting excited to get our tickets for next year's CleoCon? Yes, we're feeling it. We're feeling energized. Well, I'm super excited to present the next two speakers that will be coming to the stage. They're going to be talking about amazing, real opportunity for your practice and growing your practice through digital information. So these two people, I'd just love to present them. They don't need too much preamble. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce Jess Birken and Megan Zavieh.
It's a really big room. That's a really long walk, but hello. Feel free to move closer to the front. That'll make questions easier. As Jessie said, I'm Jess Birken. This is Megan Zavieh. We have a clicker. I'm in charge of it.
We do.
So you'll see our Twitter handles on the screen. Feel free to live tweet this. We will not be offended if you're looking at your phone. I'm going to assume you're just tweeting at me.
We'll assume that, kind of regardless of what you're actually doing. It's okay. But and also hit us up on Twitter. Make sure you follow us and message us. We love to hear from everybody.
All right, well, now Megan's going to tell us what the heck is a digital information product.
That's right. So you've come to a session to learn about digital information products. Hopefully you might have some clue what that is. If not, let's talk about that. So you probably already interact with a lot of digital information products, whether you use that phrase or not. If you read books on a Kindle, you're downloading one every time you get a new book. If you YouTube video when you need to fix your dishwasher, and you see a repair guy who set up his iPhone and showed you how to do it, you're using a digital information product. We see it all around in our daily lives, but we don't see it that much in law. And we really think that we should be seeing it more in law. We see huge opportunities for their use. And we've had some really good examples of some innovative lawyers who've been creating some really cool digital information products. So one is Hello Divorce. Now, if Erin Levine could have been here today, she could tell you about Hello Divorce. But she's off pitching Hello Divorce at Duke in an incubator project, which is like amazingly cool, and gives you some sense of how awesome digital information products can be in law, because they get a lot of attention. So she's a family law attorney, and she saw a need for self-represented parties to have more information. So she created Hello Divorce as an information platform. It provides a lot of services that a lawyer just can't do because we are only human and there's only 24 hours in the day and we have families and we have lives. And so this product was created to try and get more information to the self-represented parties. We also have digital information products designed for lawyer use. The DUI roadmap is one created by our very own Erin Gersten-Zhang, who is here. As a criminal defense lawyer, she saw that her fellow lawyers didn't always have a really clear guideline for how they should present their cases, and they were starting them over every time. So she created a product that's designed to help lawyers buy lawyers. So your market isn't necessarily the consumers. And then we've got products like on Lawyerist. If you go into Lawyerist as an insider, and they have varying subscription prices, so there's a lot of creativity here, you can get information products there. Guides, PDF guides, forms. There's so many forms that these information products can take in law.
Yeah, so why should we do this, right? In Patrick's session yesterday, some of our groups were talking about how do we create systems that provide affordable legal services and are still profitable for attorneys. We think digital information products might be one of those ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
They can generate passive income. You know, you can potentially stop trading time for money. They can also just be used as lead generator tools. If you've got something free that people can opt into on your website, now you have their email, now you can drip market to them and add all that value before they potentially want to hire you. It also fills a need. So one of the things we talked about yesterday in that session was how do we educate people more, right? How do we get out to the consumer and even teach them that they have a legal issue? Because half of our struggle is just letting people know that we're there to do something for them because they may not even understand that they have a legal problem. So those are some of the reasons why.
We also find that digital information products allow us to increase our reach beyond just the state where we are licensed to practice. Information products are not actually practicing law. You're not giving legal advice. You're giving information that pertains to the legal system. And a lot of times that information has broad appeal. So if you look at, say, Hello Divorce, it's very California focused in terms of its information about how to get a divorce, the process. But it has information about wellness as you're going through the stressful time of your marriage falling apart. It has information about counseling, about co-parenting. That information applies whether you're in Connecticut or California. So we end up with a much broader audience for our information.
Plus, we're meeting them where they're at, which if you were in Billy's session about the modern law firm, it's treating the whole patient, right?
Exactly. And that's true of other areas of information products in other practice areas as well. It also positions you as an expert in what you do. If you, for example, were to walk into a law office and there was a book on the table written by the lawyer whose office you were in, you'd see that, oh, they must really know what they're talking about, right? Here's a book they wrote. And I know some of the people, even presenters here at Clio, have done that. And there's a book right there about the process. Well, this is the digital equivalent of that. You're known as the one who wrote the book, created the product, that positions you as an expert in your field. And the education component is also super important. If you think about the clients who come into your office who know nothing about what you do yet, they know you, okay, I need a divorce and you're a divorce lawyer. That's maybe as much as I know. How much time do you spend educating them about the process, what to expect, how to work with you? Well, your information product can actually give all of that information ahead of time so that the people who come into your office are not exactly pre-screened. They've already decided they want to talk to you, but they're pre-educated. So they are a much easier to work with client because they have all that information ahead of time.
So Megan, maybe you can tell us about your product.
So it's not a sales pitch, right? This is the Clio thing. We're not pitching our products, but we want to talk to you about what we created so you know where we're coming from and the journeys we've taken. I also really hope no one here needs my product because it's how to defend yourself in an ethics investigation or in prosecution. And I certainly hope none of you ever are facing that. But I am a state bar defense lawyer, so my job is to defend my fellow lawyers before the state bar, primarily in California. So I defended investigations all the way through to actual trials and appeals. And it's a weird world. I call it Wonderland. I didn't come up with that myself. A lot of other lawyers in this field will also describe it that way because it's not what we expect. A lot of rules that we think will apply don't, and processes and procedures are different. So I wanted to help the lawyers who do go through the process self-represented. There's a lot of reasons why they do that, but the fact is that there's a huge contingent that are defending themselves. So I created the State Bar Playbook. It is a practice guide intended to walk you through every step of the procedure. But it's more than just a book. It's not something you could walk into the law library and find on the shelf. Because although there is a text component, it is an interactive one, and it has videos. It also has a library of sample forms, so that as you go through the process and you say, oh, I need to serve a discovery request, it doesn't look like a civil court discovery request. Here's a form. So I've created a library that gives you what I hope is everything you'll need. As users go through it, they can tell me there's something missing, and I can add it. Another advantage of a digital product, because you can't just add something to the book in the library. So there's a few screenshots here. You can sort of see what the inside of my product looks like. That's the actual book right there, the iPDF, an interactive PDF. Even the table of contents is clickable, so you go in and say, this is the chapter I need, and it flips right to it. And there's embedded videos as well. So that's my The screenshots are all of the actual information that's provided. There's one other component, which there's not a screenshot of, which is a forum, so that users can interact with each other. So that if you say, hey, I'm before this judge and she said this and I don't get it, I don't want to be giving legal advice and guidance personally to every one of the people who can buy the product. I haven't run conflicts. I don't know the facts of their cases, but they can interact with each other and share information.
I didn't even know you had that. That's awesome.
I do. And then Jess has created a completely different product, which is sort of the point. This is limitless possibilities of how you can create digital information products. So let's hear about yours.
OK, so the product that I created is called Founders Roadmap. And the way my practice area is nonprofits. So I work with charities, and I do a lot of startups, and I work with a lot of founders. And as a consequence, I do a lot of consultations with people who don't really know what they're doing yet. They have an idea. They're very excited about their idea. Sometimes they've already started running down the road with no plan with their idea. And what I found was that I was spending a lot of time in consultations helping people decide, do I want to be starting a nonprofit? Should I be a for-profit? And I basically used the entire hour explaining, this is how a nonprofit works. This is how a for-profit works. This is why you would choose a nonprofit. This is why you might choose a for-profit. And by the end of the consultation, I've provided all this great education, but we haven't really spent that much time on the meat and potatoes of like, what do they want to do? And I'm basically, it was just repeating myself over and over again. And I thought, I'm getting kind of tired of this. And there's also, I know a lot of people looking for this information. So I thought, well, what if I could kind of package up what I do in my consultation and help people anywhere, not just in my home state of Minnesota, make this decision? So it's, for me, a potential lead generator, because at the end of the product, ideally, they're going to want to hire me, right? If they're in Minnesota. So the way my product works is what you see on the screen. There's a starting a nonprofit ebook that people, it's free, they opt in, they give me their email address, and then they get a 90-day trail of emails that's, basically add value, explain things that they might have questions about. And there's always an opportunity for them to opt into this course. And then if they're in Minnesota, they can hire me. Theoretically, they could hire me for the IRS portion of their application if they're not in Minnesota. We haven't really had to cross that bridge yet. So I'll show you behind the.
So Jess, the people who've gone through your product who decide at the end of it not to be a nonprofit, they've still gained something. You haven't spent the time on a consultation.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah, so the whole thing with the course is if they get the consultation with me after they've taken the course, they're showing up to the consultation and getting just 100% lawyer strategy value from that consultation now, because they've already done the 101, which lane do I want to pick? How does a nonprofit work? Oh, it has a board. I didn't know how that works. I don't get to make all the decisions myself. They've already gotten all of that 101 advice. And then when they hit the office with me, it's a much more productive conversation because they've already received so much education about their decision making. So this screen that you see here is just my welcome page. And you've all logged into 1,000 things like this. We don't see a lot of this in the legal industry, but you can have a login screen to something for a legal product.
Looks like logging into Netflix or any other place we log into every day.
Once you get in there are 5 modules. It's all video-based. They're pretty clear. I use a product called ClickFunnels to build this, which is $100 a month. It's very affordable. This is something you could make or hire someone on Freelancer to make for you. And then once they get in there, I took a lot of time to consider how people learn. So I have video for people who are visual learners. I've got a workbook for people who learn by doing. I've got downloadable audio for people who want to listen to the lessons while they're driving in their car on their way to work. And I've got transcripts. So if someone learns by reading, or maybe they're not a native English speaker and it's helpful to them to see everything written down, they can get that. Okay.
Now,
So-
we've learned a lot creating these products.
That's what we've done. Now let's talk about all the mistakes we've made.
We hope you can learn from our mistakes.
Yeah, so definitely one of the lessons that I know I have learned is that this whole thing takes a lot of time and or money, and it takes talent, either yours or someone you pay for. So that's just the reality of this. We're not saying it's necessarily easy, and there's not a lot of examples of this in our industry. Right. So there's not really a big template to work from, like what's going to work, what's not going to work.
No, there's definitely not a crib sheet for it. And it also takes a lot more time to market than I know personally I ever expected. And I have learned more about marketing in working with this product than I ever did just from marketing my law practice. And something that we've heard a bit about in some of the other sessions, if you've attended them, is trying to meet our clients where they are. And I've had to learn that my clients don't necessarily look for help for representing themselves in state bar court. I have found that what people do is they go, oh, I have this complaint. I gotta defend myself against this. Should I hire someone? I don't think I can. Okay, I'm gonna go defend myself. They miss this step that I want them to recognize, which is, oh, I'm gonna represent myself. I wonder what help is out there. They're not asking that question. And so the marketing portion of it was so much harder than I expected. I thought, you throw the product up there, website's live, everybody's gonna see it. Well, not necessarily.
Yeah, one of the problems I've run into is a lot of people who want to start a nonprofit, they just want everything for free. So they might opt into this free ebook, but they have no intention of actually spending any money on anything.
Nonprofit.
And a lot of that just has to do with like people who have ideas and don't execute on them. There's any number of reasons, but there is also this sort of culture of like, well, I would make this a nonprofit because then everything would be free. And this is just one of the myths in the nonprofit sector that everything is free, which it's totally not. But there are definitely a lot of marketing challenges for people in these funnels. Another lesson we've learned is there's just a lot of testing. So I know for me, and I don't know if it was hubris or just naivete, but I was like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna put it out there, it's gonna be amazing. And then you do this and you put it out there, and then like you have your first launch and like nobody even got to the sales page because they didn't open the email or whatever. So it's like, okay, that didn't work. All right, so back to the drawing board. Like my copy and my email isn't good enough. It's not saying the right things, so let's try something else. And there's just a lot of time iterating and testing and testing and testing. So I did this with a shoestring budget, and I did not, hire a big firm to help me market this. So there's definitely been a lot of like bootstrapping and a lot of testing and retesting, which takes a lot of time. So this is something that I've been working on since TBD in St. Louis.
So, a year and a half.
Yeah. So, it takes a while, and there's just so many opportunities and points at which you have a breakdown that you have to test something and redo it, that was unanticipated for me anyway.
Yeah, I agree. And this isn't what we went to school for. We're lawyers, we're not business people. We say that with just even our solo practices and not knowing how to run a business. Well, again, we're lawyers and we aren't necessarily design thinkers and product creators and marketers. So there are a lot of pieces of it that's new. And that's not to say it's necessarily a problem, because a lot of it's really fun to learn, but you have to recognize that we're going to be drawing on some skills that are not our strengths.
Yeah, and for me, like I graduated magna cum laude, and I was like the A student or whatever, so I'm not used to doing things where I apply myself and then just keep falling on my face over and over and over again, like, oh, that's just really, I am way too type A and overachiever, So it's been good for me to to have that happen some. But I imagine there are a lot of personality types amongst our peers that fall into this category where it's like, you know, you're not used to doing something and not having it work if you just like grind harder, you know?
Yeah, which makes it a bit scary to embark on creating a project, but they're really fun, and there's a lot of good reasons that we'll get into for why you should consider doing it yourself anyway. So those are the things we've learned, but what if even despite our lessons, you say, I want to get started, I want to try something, I have this great idea.
Yeah, it's scary, but it's totally worth taking the risk. So how would you get started? I would say one of the first most important things that you can do is really figure out, obviously, like, what are you going to make, but also...
That's a very good first starting point.
Yeah. But also, who are you making this for, like, specifically? Because you're not making this for everyone. Some people are just going to, they're not going to want to buy Founder's Roadmap. They just want to come and sit with me and have me teach them personally for an hour. That's okay. That's fine. So I have to figure out who are the people that are looking for this thing and are open to being educated in an online format, right? And then you have to also figure out their psychology. So there's this whole concept of the customer journey, and Jack Newton talked about that in his keynote, and Billy's talked about it, and it's like, where are these people at, right? They're coming, they've got like this thing. So for my people, they're like, I want to save the snails. Snails are, you know, abused in the world. They're crushed underfoot. Their shells are broken. I'm going to start a charity to save the snails. This is going to be amazing. And you have to figure out, like, where are they at in their journey. So one of the things that I struggled with was I thought my people were confused by the IRS and all of the things. And I had to realize, oh no, actually where I'm catching these people when they're like excited to save the snails. So I need to like change all of my marketing stuff to be like, you're excited, you're gonna go save the snails, and I'm gonna help you do that. Instead of being like, the IRS is really confusing, and you're despondent that you don't know what's going on. Those are two totally different psychological places, and you need to really dig in and figure out with testing, talking to people. The guys who did the keynote this morning talked about those, what did they call it? They had a conversation, prototyping conversation.
Prototype conversations, yep.
That's exactly what you need to do. You need to go talk to people who are experiencing the things that you're trying to help them with, and figure out where they're at, and then use their words in your materials.
Yeah, and I'd follow on that, just that when you are trying to figure out where people are so you can meet them there to talk about your product, they're not the ones who've already called your office. So it seems really easy to, oh, I talk to lawyers facing bar investigation every day. All I have to do is ask them, what are you thinking about right now? Where are you emotionally? What are your concerns? Only by the time they've called me, they've passed the point that my product would help them. They're not interested in my product because they've already decided that they want to talk to a lawyer. And the same with the Founder's Roadmap. By the time they call Jess, they already know they want to talk to someone, so they've bypassed that point. So we actually have to get to a place that we are not accustomed to as lawyers. We have to go out and talk to people before they call us. We're kind of used to sitting there in our office and waiting for the phone to ring. And even lawyer marketing courses will tell you that, you know, we can't just sit there forever. We've got to go out and do something. But the things we do for marketing don't usually involve going out and just talking to people kind of cold. Because remember, they haven't decided that they want to talk to you yet. So that's a really hard thing, but I think it's a really important first step. And actually, it's one that I know I did not do enough of in creating my product. And it's just something that whatever you're thinking about creating, any ideas that you have, you've got to sort of map out who are your potential customers and where are they before they've heard of you. But when you do decide to start, just start. Do it now. It is a very easy project to let slip to the back burner. Whatever you're doing in your law practice, that's what's paying your bills. It's what you know, it's what you have processes in place for, and this other thing could just sit there as an idea forever. It could be on your someday, 2-year plan, and then it goes in next year's 2-year plan, and then next year's 2-year plan, and it just never gets done. And there's so much value in creating a product, and like I mentioned earlier, we will talk about some of the things that we've gotten out of this. There's so much value in creating it that you just need to pick a time to start. And what I ended up doing is that I had this idea for probably a couple of years before I started working on it. So I think I was one of those people, keep pushing it, keep pushing it. I had tried to get to the self-represented lawyers a number of times through various product strategies within my firm, service line offerings, but I hadn't considered the digital product. So I came up with the idea and thought, oh yeah, that's one way I could do it. And it sat there, gathering dust. It's a great idea, I should try and do something with that. And then I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna jump in and do this. And I looked at the timeline, and I recognized that my children got out of school in about 3 weeks. At that time, it was May of whichever year. And I thought, okay, well, let me make a list of the chapters that should be in at least the PDF, in the book part. And I made that list, and I figured out that if I did a chapter a day, I'd have a draft before school got out. And that's a hard deadline, right? I mean, everything changes when school gets out. If you have young children, you understand. So I had to have it done by that last day of school. So I intentionally set myself up in a way that I would get a chapter written every day. I took my things and I went to the local library. I didn't write it in my nice, comfortable office. I wrote it in a place where I couldn't bring food, where I didn't really like leaving my things at the desk to go to the bathroom, and I was generally uncomfortable. And the reason I did that was because if I was comfortable, I'd take a call, I'd go get another cup of coffee, I'd go, maybe I'll go to the bathroom. That chapter is not happening, right? So I did a chapter a day that way, and at the end of the school year, I had a draft. And I thought, I'm done, awesome. And I gave it to my editor. I happen to have someone close to me who's been through the process self-represented. Perfect editor, right? And I was like, yeah, read this, it's ready. And he read it and he came back, he goes, it's a great start. I'm like, start? I mean, start, I'm done, school's out, I'm done. So no, I wasn't done, but that iteration of it was truly the start. Had I not set those deadlines for myself and forced myself to create that first draft with the completely delusional notion that it was going to be the only draft, I probably wouldn't have it put together. That was a really important thing to do. Once I had the draft and we were actually working with it, well, then it kind of snowballed, right? Because your enthusiasm's going, you're like, I got this whole draft, oh, that's a great idea, somebody comes up with something else to add, and now you want to work on it. So that inertia is really important to get over at the beginning by just getting out and starting.
Yeah, there's so many. So there's some general whose name escapes me right now, but he has this famous speech where he's like, you got the known knowns and the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns. This is that, right? Because you think,
so much.
oh, I'm making this thing, and I know, I have this plan, and I've got my outline, and I have a checklist, and I have a process, and then you're like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that, or oh right, I'm gonna have to do this other thing, or oh, this now, because I made that decision over here, this whole other thing changed, and so the process is you don't even know.
No, you don't.
There's so many unknown unknowns that you just have to start now. It's ready, fire, aim. It's just start going, don't break the bank doing it, and keep moving forward. Because,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. Once you've partially brought this thing into the world, now you're ooh, now it's a thing I can touch or email to someone or show and be and then you're excited to keep going and polish it and finish it and test it.
Yes, absolutely.
Or at least that's how I work.
That's how I felt. That's certainly how I felt. It was no longer just an idea on my list. It was a thing. And now I'd invested. The whole concept of sunk costs, I had invested in this thing and started to create it. I wanted to see it through. But how far to see it through? How far to see it through at the very outset is one of the questions you need to be asking yourself as you start. And we get to the concept of the minimum viable cat. Now you might think we're supposed to say product. Yeah, that's like startup terminology, right? Minimally viable product. But we like to talk about the cat. So the idea is whatever you're going to create at the outset, to just start to put it out there, to get some feedback from people, enough that people can look at it and say, oh, I understand what you're doing here. This is how it would serve my needs. Give you actually productive feedback. You've got to have a minimum standard that you're going to meet to push it out in the world. And the analogy with the cat is...
Shout out to Matt Holman.
Absolutely. Matt Holman of Filament presented it to us this way with the cat. You walk into the Louvre and you find a Renaissance painting of a cat, and you see every little piece of hair, and it's beautiful. It could be like alive. It could come out of the wall, right? And it's gorgeous, and someone spent untold hours mixing their paints and creating this beautiful masterpiece, which maybe nobody wanted. So you do a stick drawing of a cat. Here's
Like, you
our cat.
know that's a cat. It ain't
circle,
Renaissance
and a couple
art.
triangles, two circles and another triangle, and everybody here can look at that and see a cat, right? You all get it that it's a cat. Well, do you like my cat? Do you want a cat? What could this cat do for you?
Yeah, would you pay for this cat?
Would you pay for this cat if it was a little prettier? How much prettier would it need to be? You can start to do some market research with that. You can learn so much. And not do this whole beautiful painting and then find out that your clients actually wanted it to be gray.
Right. This morning in the keynote, those guys, Dave and Bill, they were talking about set the bar low so that you can clear it. That's the minimum viable cat, right? What is the smallest, cheapest, littlest product that you could make to sell to your target market that you think they're interested in, that you can see if they will give you an email for it or open their wallets for it. Because if nobody will give you their email, then they're definitely not going to open their wallet. So set the bar low. I had my dream product is this soup to nuts, start to finish, build your nonprofit. Don't pay a document service company. Don't hire a lawyer, because there's probably not one in your state. And buy this mega course from me. I cannot build that whole thing. I should not build that whole thing.
You shouldn't build that whole thing.
I don't even know that people want to buy that, right? I'm not even sure it would cost me so much time and effort to build that whole thing out. I need to just test something small. And I think arguably the course I made is too big. My cat's too pretty. Maybe if I did it again, I would have started with something even tinier, like a PDF download for $10 or something. Just to have that little bit of proof that people actually want what you're selling. Because I think one of the things we do as lawyers is we think, and I don't know if Kim's in here, but we were talking about this, that we think we know what our customers, our clients need, and we try and give them that. But we need to give them what they want, too. So does anybody actually want what you are trying to give them? Your customers definitely need help. But some people are just they just don't want it necessarily, right? They're like, nope, I'm doing this myself.
That's absolutely true. And I could have made more of a stick figure cat. That's actually, we didn't put it as one of our lessons learned, but it absolutely is. This is a concept we now say to you. We want you to learn from us. Make it minimum. Really make it minimum. I could have gone a lot lower. I didn't really need to build the forums at the beginning, because until anybody is in there, there's no one to talk to. You didn't really need that platform. It could have been a coming soon on the website.
It's real.
The library of forms, that probably could have been a coming soon. What forms would you like to see in here? A little input form probably would have sufficed as an initial offering. And then people could start responding. And if no one did respond, I probably have a good sense they didn't actually need that part. There's a lot more testing that I could have done, because I certainly thought that I knew what they needed. That's very patriarchal, right? We always tell them, oh, we know what you need.
But that's lawyers, right? That's one of our charms.
That's a flaw as lawyers. But definitely, as you start to consider starting something, figure out what that low bar is. listen to the keynote this morning if you weren't here, and definitely consider how small that initial prototype actually can be.
Okay, so the thing that helped me the most when I was coming up with my product ideas was this thing called guided mind mapping. And some of you might already be familiar with mind mapping, potentially. This is a very structured mind map. And sometimes mind mapping can just be like a mess of things on paper with like lots of bubbles and legs and things going everywhere.
I love that.
You like that?
I love my big roll of butcher paper and my Sharpies, and I have arrows.
I like paper too, especially when I'm thinking, because I was born in '78, so I grew up using pencil and paper. But what this tool does, and this is my very fancy graphic that I made for you. You can see I have really good skills in this area. The mind mapping that I use is you decide what is your client's struggle zone, right? So for me, for nonprofits, that's the nonprofit founder struggle zone. Let's call it that. Then you talk about so for me, nonprofit founders, what are their mistakes? What mistakes do they make? And then you ask, why? Why does it matter? So they made a mistake. Who cares? Then you look at what are solutions that I can offer, or that I do offer, right? Because I do this as my day job. I offer solutions. So for each mistake, or each reason why it matters, and each solution that I offer, you draw a little leg and write it down. So for my people, nonprofit founders struggle zone is they choose the wrong entity, or they don't understand how the board works. They don't plan what their programs are going to be. Like, how are you going to save those snails? Like, how does that work?
Do they know how to ask the right questions even at the beginning?
Right. So those are like some of the mistakes that they make. And why it matters? Well, if you choose the wrong entity, you're up shit creek without a paddle. You got to start over. One of the mistakes they make is using a document filing company, and they don't know how to answer all the questions, and then they end up getting an entity formed that they didn't mean to. Like, they might have accidentally created a private operating foundation because they answered a question wrong on the form. So solutions I offer are, I help them plan their programming. I help them choose the right entity. I educate them about how the board works, all of those things. So then with this guided mind map, now I have all of those things, and then I take just one and I work on that, and I do the same thing over again. So one of their mistakes was they don't plan out their programming. They're like, I'm gonna save the snails and it's gonna be amazing. And they meet with me and I say, how does that work? How do you get connected with the snail community? You like that one, Aaron? Who are the other people in the snail space that are already raising money around saving snails? Are you competing for the same dollar with those organizations? Where will your snail programming happen? I mean, like, will it be like on sidewalks when it's been raining outside and snails are most active? All right, I've beaten that to death, I realize. So they don't plan their programming. So now the struggle zone is just this one mistake, right? They don't plan their programming. So then, and this is literally like my sheet of paper that I did this on. Okay, what are the solutions I can offer? What are the mistakes they make around the program, this bigger mistake? What are the sub-mistakes? Why does it matter? Now, not only have I created all of these things, I could like maybe make a course just around how to plan your programming. And I've got solutions, problems, reasons why. Those are all great topics for me to do in my sales copy, blog about it, put it on my website. Now I have 25 things I can tweet about or whatever.
That's right. And you hear that she's niching down really in the concepts that, she starts with, oh, nonprofit founders have all these issues. And then she niches down until she's got one little itty bitty issue to start to extrapolate how are we going to solve all of these problems related to that issue. Well, that niching down is actually a part of forming the idea in the first place. How narrow are you going to make your product? How narrow is your audience? And then as you continue to develop it, you just get nitty gritty, as granular as possible. And you do that very intentionally, because you're not going to be really solving anyone's problems if the information leaves them with more questions. And that's something that, for me, that was that first draft of my book, and then It's a Good Start. That was because I left too many questions unanswered. It was, here's the process for when you need to answer. Here's a sample answer, and this is what you need to put in. And then my editor said, okay, the person who's never done this before reads that and goes, well, do I need affirmative defenses? Oh, yeah, I should have told them that. Yes, you need affirmative defenses. Okay, where do they find those? Oh, yeah, well, let me tell you how you find those. Every little thing gets more and more narrow, because if you're going to provide a product that eliminates the need for them to hire you, which is often the original purpose of these products, then you have to get all the way down to the smallest detail. And the same thing with creating the mind mapping. You're using mind mapping as your tool. You get to the narrowest little piece, and then you figure out what are all the solutions to just this piece. And you can create little micro products, and those can be some of your minimally viable products to put out there. That can be your cat. Your cat can be, oh, nonprofit founders, once they've figured it out and they actually have it in place, don't do their programming right. I could make just this little piece about programming. I could put it out there to people who've gotten past the founding stage and they exist, and see if my delivery mechanism works. See if this is something that people who founded nonprofits would be interested in. And you can extrapolate that all the way through that testing. You can see there's like a million ways you can do it, and some of it might start to sound overwhelming as we talk about it. But I want to tell you why you really should consider doing this anyway. For me, creating my product helped me work through my practice area at a level of detail I never had before. And you'd think that when you become pretty experienced in a practice area, you know all the ins and outs. You think you know all the rules. You certainly can take a case from start to finish with not committing malpractice and not creating big issues. You've got it. You're competent. But when you go to actually write every detail and get really granular, you learn things. I found little procedural things where I was like, oh, hey, look at that. I never knew I could insist the state bar give me whatever. Like, you find these little details. And for me, I've also created my own handbook. I mean, I use it all the time. I have it stored on my hard drive, and I go, what's that rule? Oh, yeah, let me just pull it up in the book. I don't have to go to the rules because I've already done this research. So there's been a tremendous benefit for me, just personally, of having created it. And if you think about that for your own practice area, whatever it is, if you wrote a guide for yourself, pretend you're going on a one-year vacation and handing your practice to someone who's never done it before, and you wrote that all out, you'd have this amazing resource at your fingertips. So I think there's a ton of benefit to doing it, even if you think it sounds overwhelming.
Yeah. Well, I think we have a good bit of time left for questions, and or if anybody wanted to volunteer to come up and do mind mapping on the spot, we would do that with you.
Yeah. Well, I think we have a couple questions. All the way on this side
first. Are you
first?
volunteering to mind map right there?
Yeah. Oh, we have a mic coming out of the way. We have two on that row there, Jesse.
Hi, I was just wondering, can you give us the actual tools that you use to create the interactive ebook?
So that is the one place I spent money. Everything else I did myself, but I hired a designer to use Adobe, one of the higher level products, to do an interactive PDF, and I had that all coded. Because I recognized my limitations, shall we say. And, all the way down.
Oh. Great minds think alike.
Yeah.
Here we have a question over here.
Ooh, we have a volunteer.
Yeah.
Awesome. Do we have another question first? Was there a question?
Greg McLaughlin.
We won't
has
call
a
you. Oh,
question.
I wasn't going to call him out, but yeah, Greg.
So it was Donald Rumsfeld is who you were thinking of.
Donald Rumsfeld.
The known unknowns. Could you talk a minute about the process of finding an editor for these? Was this like an Upwork thing, or how'd you track them down?
So normally I would have started with something like that. He lives in my basement, and he's the reason I am here. Yeah, so I just happened to get into state bar defense work because my dad needed help. Yeah, so I came with that one. One more question?
Greg, your question was?
How did I get an editor?
Oh, about finding an editor. Yeah, did you have one?
Yeah, how did I get my editor?
Oh, how did you get the editor?
So, I mean, mine's my dad. It's really easy.
Yeah. I have somebody that works with me very part-time who reviews all of the things that I write because it's really hard to review your own writing.
Yeah, I would say on that one, finding somebody who has lived through what your product is intended to address is so valuable. I mean, like I said, I just happen to have that. And it's why I'm in this practice area in the first place. I recognize that's not always the case, but I'd look back at clients. I'd look at past clients that are in the situation that you're trying to serve with your product and look for somebody who would be relatable and willing and, being able to work with them. And I'd even, especially if they're no longer a client, I'd offer to pay them and hire them as an editor or as a sounding board.
Reviewer. I think we have a mind mapping volunteer. Are you willing to come up here? Oh man, I'm so excited. Come on down.
And you are. Yes, the price is right.
We're going to spin the wheel. Okay,
Jesse,
just kidding.
are these mics on? Or that? So
or we can maybe
hear,
just
so
use
everyone
that
can
one.
hear the product idea.
Hi, what's your name?
Jim
Jim
Yeah,
Hackney.
it's loud.
Hi.
Hi, Jim.
Nice to meet you.
I listen to your podcast.
I was going to say, I listened to yours.
Yeah.
What's your practice area?
So I'm an immigration lawyer, and I've been doing it for about 12 years. I have a ton of YouTube videos and blog posts that I think I could turn into courses related to different parts of immigration. Like, for instance, like if someone wanted to bring their spouse here. So with immigration being federal, I thought I could, we can practice all over the country, but that there's a lot of people that can't afford to hire us, and they might want to bring a spouse here from overseas. So I think that would be a good information product.
Okay,
would be.
so
And you have the content already.
Yeah, it's all
Which
just
is great.
jumbled up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody has the content. It's in their heads.
Well,
it's
that's
just
true.
a matter
But
of getting
he's
it out.
created it in a way that can be shared.
Yeah.
Until they learn to read our minds, we have to do that.
Okay, so immigration target market. How do you characterize these folks? Are they?
So this is a U.S. citizen who has a spouse overseas, and they want to bring them here through the green card process.
Okay, so spouse needs a green card process, struggle zone. What are the mistakes that these people make or the issues that come up for them?
Well, so last month, USCIS changed the rules and said that if you send us an application and there's a fundamental defect in it, we're going to cash your check and deny your case. So the biggest problem is delays. People think that they need lawyers to help them get through the whole process, which is true, but really it's not so much denials that's their enemy. Their big enemy is delays.
Okay, so
what kind of mistakes are they making?
yeah.
Not submitting all the right evidence, not having all the evidence gathered before they file, because what happens is if you do get a request for evidence, you usually only have 30 days or 90 days to get it together, and sometimes these are sort of fundamental identity documents like birth certificates or marriage certificates, and they just don't send it in, and then they have to scramble to get it in time for the deadline.
Okay, you're conflating my mind map, man.
Oh, sorry.
He's
Just
got the Ys
mistakes.
and the mistakes.
Okay.
We got Ys
Mistakes.
and mistakes coming in at the same
Got it.
time. So the mistakes are,
Not having all their information and not submitting it properly,
and it matters because,
it'll cause delay or denials of their case,
Okay.
which means they'll be separated from their spouse.
and what are solutions that you offer in your practice right now?
Yeah, so we have a checklist. We've sat down and mapped out. There's actually 72 steps to bring someone from overseas to the United States.
Did you say 72?
72.
Gosh.
Yeah. So most people probably would only think of about 15 of them. So
Awesome.
yeah.
All right, so you can kind of hear how this starts to come together as now we've got, and this is like obviously a short, compressed example, but we could go in deeper on the not messing up their information, and then just do this all again. And then now you've got potentially a minimum viable product, minimum viable cat. Like maybe you pick one of those issues and create something around that.
Like a checklist or something?
Yeah, so like now their struggle zone you can define as gathering the right information to get started. Okay, so what are the mistakes you make? Well, maybe do they not get certified documents? Like, is that a problem?
That's one. Yeah, or bad translations, or sure.
Okay, so you could start to create a product that was just how to gather your initial documents to make sure that you get your immigration process underway properly.
And that
those people could come to you, like
Right.
you could send that out, people could do that portion, right? They could view those videos, gather the right documents, show up at your doorstep with the right stuff already.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that might
so-
only
Right, so
be
you
like
niche it
one
down
of your
and get really
72
narrow.
steps. Like that might just be like one of your checklist items, but that's totally okay. Because you can create something around that one bit and then put it out there and see, do people watch that YouTube video? Do people click to download this checklist? Do people want that series of 5 emails that will give them that information? And then you know if you can like make something a little bit bigger.
Yeah, I've always thought that I could create it for my actual current clients and then turn that into, or take that part out and give it to, or sell it to the people that aren't actually hiring us.
Absolutely. And it could even be a free thing. I mean, we didn't talk a whole lot about whether you monetize the product or not, because there are actually reasons for some of these, especially if they're smaller, to be free, you know, as lead generators or as education products for your clientele, so that when they come in, they've already done things like gather the right documents or figure out if they want to be nonprofit or for-profit.
Awesome.
So you could,
Cool.
you could
Thank
use
you,
it so many
Jim.
ways.
guys.
Round of applause
Nice
for
to meet
Jim
you.
for
Thank
being
you.
willing to
Thank
come up here.
I think we had another question here.
Do you have more questions?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
The mic is coming.
So, I was just wondering, with having digital products out there, are you concerned that someone can pirate the work? I mean, in the digital age, it's not hard to for a person to come and repackage it and claim it as his or her own, and you might never know.
Very true. Very true. It's definitely a concern that I take enough steps, you know, that I think I've provided some protection. I'm never going to completely protect it, and it's something I certainly thought through and just kind of accepted in creating it. I know my very small bar. I mean, there's like 15 of us who do this as a full-time thing in California. I'm going to know if one of them is suddenly at least packaging it online. They, I suppose, could, you know, purchase it, print it, and give it to people. I'm not going to be able to stop that. But things like having it be a membership site I figure, is going to at least cut down on that. I made the choice in creating the additional aspects of my product to give a reason why you want your own login. Because I certainly thought about that even just one person could buy it, and then all their friends, hopefully there's not like a bunch of people, all friends facing bar complaints at the same time, but you know, you never know. I figured they could like hand out that password.
You travel in.
But that was one reason for the forum. You can't go in the forum as yourself and talk to yourself if you're all sharing the same login. It's not going to work the same way, and it's going to be really obvious.
And there's trademark registration, and there's copyright, and there's just the reality that if you are a business putting stuff into the world, that's just an issue of business. So I don't think that's like should be something that we limit ourselves from making stuff. This is like when I talk with lawyers about technology and like using cloud-based apps, and they're like, "What's an app?" And then there's always one person who's like, "But it's not secure to use the cloud." And it's like, I feel like that's just the thing you say to avoid changing anything, you know? So I would kind of I wouldn't let that stop you. You know, like, yeah, that's going to happen. But if somebody does that then that's got Megan's stuff all over it. And if 5 people are logging in using one person's login, that's 5 potential clients.
That's very true. Yeah.
Like, yeah, did they end run buying it? Yeah. But are they all thinking, like, this woman is amazing and she totally knows her stuff and I'm totally going to hire her because this is too hard? Probably. So,
No. I think we had another question.
So it sounds like you can get clients from it, but it also sounds like you are giving information to someone to do it themselves, that could do something themselves. So I'm thinking about, how do you avoid like an ethical issue with giving legal advice?
I knew somebody had to ask the ethics lawyer about ethics eventually. Thank you.
You're welcome.
good question.
It is a good question. So the way that certainly my product is designed and Jess's is, and if you look around, I think you'll see a lot of them purposely work this way, is that by having more of a one-way flow of information, you're not forming an attorney-client relationship. I don't know who you are beyond your name on the order. I don't know anything about the facts of your case. You're not telling me anything about it. We're not communicating directly. We don't have an attorney-client relationship. I'm providing you with information. If down the road you choose to hire me, if you are one of the people who starts down the road of self-representation and goes, oh, this is over my head, I need help, you're probably going to call me because you've been using my product and you know me and I am the embodiment of the defense for you as far as help goes with the state bar. But when you call me, then I run my conflicts check. Then I learn about you. Then I find out about your case and I can start giving you legal advice. So they're really 2 separate things. And the product might be used by someone that I never speak to because they use it simply to defend themselves and they go off and I never really know the outcome of their case or anything about them. And it will be sometimes used by people who ultimately become clients and they're just treated completely differently.
Yeah, and that's the same for me. Someone who goes through my course, let's say they decide, I'm going to do a for-profit because I want to retain control. They just might not buy a consultation from me. If they do, then they're signing a limited scope engagement agreement when they book the consultation and verifying that they're, signing up for all that. My course doesn't have any interactive component with me either, so I don't have that issue. It's strictly one-way information.
Yeah, and we have terms of service, that people agree to when they buy it, and you always stick it in there, just in case.
Other questions?
Any more questions?
No? Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for staying and listening to us. You guys are a great audience.